Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave. We're still on this mission of talking about apples. We're going to give you 10 of them all together, 10 apples for the price of free because, we don't charge you for podcasts. I hope you're enjoying this series. We're on episode 6 of our little mini series all around the quote that I love, that I didn't write, wish I did, that simply says, you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed. Your podcast can have impact beyond the numbers that you see when you look at your downloads. And I know as podcasters, we love our numbers, but did you know that your impact is far-reaching, way more than that number you see? If that number is 1, 10, 20 listens, 100,000 listens, I want you to understand that those numbers can represent listeners who are taking your content into their lives and making decisions based on what they've learned by coming to your podcast. You can change the course of the history of your listeners by showing up as a podcaster, delivering great content, and helping your listener move forward with the information that you provide in your podcast. To that end, today we're going to look at some actionable tips. I'll give you 3 that you can implement to ensure that your message has impact and leaves your audience with valuable insights. Here on the How to Podcast series, again, it's the Appleseed series. So many series, so much fun. And I really appreciate you being here to catch this next episode. Here we go. So we're back again for number 6 in our series of 10 episodes around the Appleseed quote that I shared with you at the top of the podcast. Now, if you're like, Dave, this is a lot of information, and I would love to get this information somehow, look in the show notes. That's the description that comes with the podcast. If you scroll on your phone, kind of scroll up a little bit, you should see some information, and that'll be there for you. What I'm going to do is also post these as blog posts to my website. I'm working on it with my 7 podcasts and working full time. I'm trying to balance it all, but it's coming. So just so you know, but I want you to hear the episode for now. And you can look over on YouTube and you can pull the transcription down if you're interested, and you'll have all the words that I'm saying right there for you. It's free. So free is good. So we're talking again along the lines of that our message needs to be impactful and leave our audience with valuable insights. So I have 3 things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about research-backed strategies. We're going to talk about storytelling and relatability, and as well, engagement and interactivity. We're going to be looking at these things. And again, they're all going to be in the show notes, so follow along at home or wherever you are. Information's there for you. Thanks for being here, by the way. So research-backed strategies for your podcast. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people saying this in podcasting, that you need to identify your listeners' pain points. So I'm thinking of you when I talk about this. Now, if you have a entertainment-based podcast, the pain point that you might be addressing is you have a comedy podcast. You want to make people laugh because they had a terrible day. That's how easy it is. It doesn't have to be some really intense, over-the-top mindset change you're looking for. It could be simply just a distraction from our day-to-day. So this also relates to you as well. Okay? You have a sports podcast, a movie review podcast, a music podcast like I have. It could just be a distraction from the day-to-day. So this also applies to you as well. Just understand the challenges, questions, problems that your target audience faces. And by researching, you can gather these insights and address these points that we would call a pain point more effectively by doing research. You can also have research-backed strategies that include expert interviews by inviting subject matter experts, people smarter than you, with more experience than you, a different insight than you have, a different lived experience than you have, somebody who you would not normally talk to. Bringing them on gives your audience a broader scope, a broader insight to what you're thinking, what you're planning for your podcast. So invite these subject matter experts on who can provide practical insights, and they're backed up by their experience and their expertise. Bring them on your show. An author would be a great example of that. A coach, somebody who's lived through something you haven't lived through. Give you new insight that you don't have on your own. You don't know what you don't know. Also around research-backed strategies, this also includes data and examples. So incorporate real-world data, case studies, facts that you've vetted, not just something that you found somewhere, but you've actually done the research to do this. Name your source as well. Put that in the show notes so that people can do their own research. But use data, use case studies, use reliable examples to validate the message that you're trying to present, and offer tangible solutions for your listeners. Research-based strategies also include actionable steps. So break down these really big, complex concepts into actionable steps that your listener can apply today. Remember, your listener might be riding the bike at the gym right now, and they don't have time to write down all of these points. Give them something they can do at the end of this recording, the end of this episode, that they can put into practice right now. Not something that's going to take 5 to 10 years to get to, something they can do and be actionable as a result of your podcast. So that's the research-based strategies. The next part, this is the storytelling and relatability of your content. And relatability is a very fun word to say when you're recording. I've said it 5 times. Through your personal anecdotes, by sharing your personal stories that relate to the topic, narratives create emotional connections, making your message more memorable. So add a little bit of you into your podcast, even when you have a guest. Bring a little bit of you into the conversation so that it's not just centered on your guest. Your audience gets to hear from your perspective as well. Listener stories encourage others to share in the experiences of your guests for you. And these related experiences help reinforce your topic. So highlight these stories in your episodes and showcase real-life applications of a story to everyday life. And by using storytelling and relatability, there's that word again, we get to be vulnerable and authentic as a host in our podcast. So be open to your own challenges. Put it out there. I just told you that saying the word relatability is a challenge when you're hitting record. I just did it without even thinking about it. Share your challenges. You're a real person talking to real people. And they're looking to you to be a real example that they can follow and they can try. And they can learn from our journey as well. This authenticity fosters a sense of connection and trust between you as the host, your guest, and as well, your audience. So storytelling, and here it comes again, relatability is a key part of making sure that you have an impact that leaves your audience with valuable insights. And then lastly, engagement and interactivity. You can do this by a variety of different ways. I like SpeakPipe on my website, howtopodcast.ca. It's a little microphone. Leave me a message. I'd love to hear from you and bring your message into the podcast. I do it, and I love to support you in your podcast. If you've done it in the past, you know what happens. If you haven't tried it yet, what are you waiting for? So use the SpeakPipe on my How to Podcast. I'd love to hear your voice. So you can use SpeakPipe. You can use question and answer sessions. You can dedicate a segment of your podcast to answering questions from your listeners. This is direct engagement. People love to hear their name on the podcast. I do. Somebody reads my question, I'm like sharing it with everybody. Hey, I was on the blah, blah, blah podcast and they said my name. What? It's great. I love it. That kind of engagement shows value for their input and provides tailored advice directly to that person. And again, we're not talking to a crowded stadium full of people. We're talking to one person. So when they reach out to you, talk to that one person because they represent the majority of your audience who are going to be quietly sitting in the stands, just listening just taking it all in, and maybe they'll never reach out to you. The moment somebody does, you need to be all over that, all over it, right away. Don't wait. You can use Q&A sessions to increase your engagement and interactivity. You can also use your call to action. You know that, the CTA, call to action. We do it at the end usually. And that's where to find us, what to do, we're most active on social media. End each episode with a specific call to action beyond just following your guest. What do you want us to do with the information you just gave us? Give us some homework. Give us a challenge. Put something in front of us that makes us go, okay, all right, I'm going to read 5 books this year. Okay, I got it. I'm going to do it. Do something. Put it out there in front of your audience and then hold them accountable. Don't just do it once and never talk about it again. Come back to it. Hey, how you doing with that call to action from 5 episodes ago? Are you on the path? Are you doing the thing? Do you need help? Let me know. End each episode with a specific call to action that prompts listeners to implement what they've learned. This could be trying a new approach, practicing a technique, or reflecting on a certain topic. And then the last part about engagement and interactivity is resource sharing. If you can, if you're going to be a guest on a podcast, come with something to offer to the guest, to the host, and to the listener. A downloadable resource, a checklist, maybe a meetup link where they can meet you outside of the podcast. Come with gifts. If you go to a party, go to a wedding, a birthday party, whatever, you come with gifts. As a guest, come to a podcast with gifts. What are you offering beyond your time to the host and to their audience? That's a great way to have engagement and to increase that interactivity. Come with an offering. Come with a gift to your host. And as a host, what are you offering? Do you have anything beyond your podcast? Think about it. What could you offer your listeners as a call to action? This adds extra value and encourages listeners to do the thing, to take action. And that's what we all want. So by incorporating these strategies of research-backed strategy, storytelling and relatability, I said it, and engagement and interactivity, by including these things, you'll be well equipped to provide value, impact, and actionable insights to your podcast audience. Remember that consistency is key. Continuously deliver practical takeaways, engage with your listeners, and refine your approach based on their feedback to create lasting impact. The Appleseed. Your podcast can have lasting impact by simply doing what we've talked about here on this episode. And that impact will go far beyond any number that you see on your hosting site that tells you that this episode has had 5 listens. And if you freak out over 5 listens and say, I give up, this is terrible, I'm terrible, I quit, realize that 5 people chose you over everything else in the world that they could do. They showed up for you. And if it's 5, if it's 1, if it's 100,000, whatever that number is that you look at, don't compare it to anybody else, because you're creating a podcast with impact. Where they're creating for the masses, you're creating for one. And if you continue to create your podcast for one, you're going to outdo anybody else with a team of 20, money out the wazoo, sponsorships. They're making thousands and thousands of dollars on their podcast. And there's little old you and little old me creating an episode for one person so that one person, their life is different. Even if it's just an entertainment podcast, you gave them joy. You made them smile. And you keep bringing them back because you showed up. And you gave them a distraction from a terrible day at work. That boss that's horrible. That work that we just don't want to do. You showed up for them. Their life's different. They treat their kids different. Their wife, their husband, their partner's different. They treat their community different. They do the thing because they heard your voice. Your impact is bigger than a number. And I really want you to understand that. And I really want you to show up like that. Because if you show up like that on a regular, consistent basis, and you serve the audience of one, I guarantee you will be a successful podcaster. Again, you might only have one listener. But if that one listener is different than when they found your podcast, you're a success. You are a success. Don't give up. Remember, you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you cannot count the number of apples in a seed. Create impactful podcasts. I want the next episode to be more impactful than the last 10. Are you committed to that? Are you going to try? Let me know. I want to hear from you. howtopodcast.ca. We'll be back for our next part of this, number 7, coming up. I'm with you, and I want to support you any way that you need help. howtopodcast.ca. I would love to hear your voice. Please reach out, use the speak pipe, leave me a voice message. I would love to hear from you. howtopodcast.ca. Grab an apple. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Something like that. Take care.